Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. It is another beautiful Monday here. Welcome to another episode of Chalkboard Chats. My name is Henry, and I'm a life coach for teachers. On this channel, we discuss all things teaching and everything in support of teachers. And today I wanted to address some misunderstandings about burnout. I have spoken to many people who are about to burn out, who feel burned out now, or who have been burned out in the past. And I have also been burned out. And this episode is to give you some tangible ideas on how to navigate through it so it doesn't happen again. Now, I'm not going to go into depth about what it is and how it manifests. I think in my experience, it has been a very personal experience where no burnout looks the same and it doesn't show up for everybody the same way. I've been burned out a couple of times, and one have felt more like a depression. The other one felt more like, well, I've noticed it that my psoriasis has flared up. So the cause of burnout or the way how it manifests isn't necessarily that important. What's important and what I'm going to focus on today is where it comes from and how do we navigate through it so it doesn't happen again. Now, when we think of burnout, especially as a teacher, we often point at students being difficult, students not performing well, or management being not supportive, or even parents getting very angry at us. And the good news is that that's not the cause. The bad news is that we're causing it ourselves, because burnout is caused by stressful thinking and staying in the emotion of anxiety and stress that comes with it. And also, it's caused by no planning besides lesson planning. Now, when we have a very stressful workday and at the end we don't process it through, this can build up over time and cause us to burn out. And when we don't sit with the stress, we don't examine it, and we kind of accept it for what it is, it accumulates over time. And especially when the only plan that you have is a lesson plan, everything else can add up to that stress. And this will lead to prolonged stress and anxiety, which on its own just can affect sleep. And then it's this spiral where it's very difficult to get out of. So what I've noticed is that as teachers, we try to control students and we try to steer them in a certain direction in the way of their performance, but also their behavior. And we're also trying to control parents. We don't want them to get angry at us. We don't want them to get frustrated with us. So we try to steer it. We try to put pressure. We try to navigate them into a different feeling and a different reaction to us. I've also noticed that we try to control management. Now, I've tried and failed miserably. It doesn't work like that. But when we try to control other humans, we are in this constant state of tension because we look at all the things they're doing, all the things that they're saying. And every time it's not into the direction that we want, we try to intervene and kind of steer them into a different direction, which is exhausting because we don't have that control. Now, the current narrative for teachers is that we should be able to control our students' behaviors, that we have an influence and a power over their performance. And we get very, very angry and very frustrated when management doesn't support us or they're making our lives even harder than it is. And we get very upset when parents share their unhappiness, their discontent with us. And the solution isn't better management. The solution isn't different students or better student behavior and even lovely parents. Now, the constant state of stress and anxiety that comes from trying to control a situation that we don't have control over will accumulate over time, where not only will you feel this, experience this feeling during work, but also when you are not at work, in the evening, at the weekends, even during holidays, you constantly relive that lack of control where we think we should have control. And it works in a way where at some point it will affect the way we sleep, affect how we can eat, it will affect our personal relationships. So it's like imploding further and further. So the bad news is that we're doing this to ourselves, which is also good news because we're not waiting for other people to change. If it was management that could solve this for us, they would have. But the thing is, management doesn't change. Same with the student. Student behavior doesn't necessarily change. You can get rid of a class and say, okay, I don't want to teach this quote unquote bad class anymore or these bad students, but in comes a different class with similar behaviors. Same with the parents. Parents will always have these emotions on both sides of the spectrum where they're and very happy and very frustrated and very excited for their child and being very angry at the situation, what is happening. So other people don't affect us directly. It is their behavior that we see and we attribute a thought or an opinion about it. So when I look at the student behavior, oftentimes we get this idea that we are, quote unquote, able to control the students, when in reality, all that we have is a classroom management system, which is only a suggestion. It sets the expectation of what we want. However, they are still free human beings that can break the rules, that can go above and beyond to make somebody else's life miserable. And in my experience, they will. Same with management. If we are dependent and waiting for management to solve our problems, we're literally saying, I cannot be happy until somebody else changes. I can't thrive as a teacher until management shows up in a different way. So we are then dependent on somebody else changing their behavior, which, we can make requests, we can ask, we can suggest, but it's still up to them. So if we look at it is us, and when we take responsibility for our own emotions and our own judgments and our own thoughts about it, now we actually have the power to change. And since the solution is with us, here are some ideas that I have found very, very useful. Number one is to process the workday. After work, I find it very important to take a moment for myself. This can be with a journal, doesn't have to be, but to take a moment with myself to actually look at what happened, what did I do, what did I say, and what were the outcomes of it. Now, this is not to use this as a battering ram to punish yourself. This is a moment where you say, I did this in the past. Here are the reasons for it. And now I'm making a conscious decision to move on. You can choose to look at all the things that went well, all the things that went wrong, and what you would do differently, for example. You could also choose to point out a couple of lessons that you've learned. But the most important thing is that you sit with it for a little bit and then give yourself permission to move on with your day. Number two is to sit with the emotions that reflection moment brings you. When you look back at a workday and let's say something hit the fan, it's easy to, get frustrated, but then shove away that frustration or to get angry, to relive that situation, whatever happened, and then to like suppress it or deny it or judge it that it shouldn't be there. Instead, try to go for acceptance. Not that we're actually agreeing with everybody or not that we're condoning whatever happened that day, but that you accept that these were the cards that were given to you. This was the game that you've played. Here is the outcome, and find acceptance in that outcome. Whether it is a parent being angry, whether it is that management wanting to have a serious meeting with you, whatever the situation was that day, sit with the emotion of frustration, the emotion of anger. Maybe it is disappointment, and to really allow it to kind of wash through you, because the more it comes through you, the easier it goes out of you. When you try to suppress it or deny it or judge it, we only kind of accumulate more, and we keep it in, and we make it all tense. And I like to call it like this soup of bad feels. But when you're actually looking at the soup and trying to sit with it and identify what the different emotions are, in my experience, this has lessened the intensity. It may not completely go away, but the grip it has on your psyche, on your mind, lessens the more you allow the emotion to be there. You do have to make a conscious choice and a conscious decision to sit with it. What I usually do is kind of describe it and say, okay, I am angry. This is what anger feels like. I kind of talk myself through it, where I describe the feeling, the sensations that it gets in my body. So for me, it usually is like hot heat here at the temple. I can feel my frown like slowly dropping in, and this overall heat that kind of radiates from here and here. And as soon as I focus on how this emotion manifests in my body, the intensity kind of lessens. Then it's time to plan. This is not just a lesson plan. This is a plan for everything outside of the classroom. So when you have a plan, when management doesn't support you, you're not that angry at the lack of support. You're like, no, no, no. They're very consistent with the lack of support. I knew you're not going to support me. That's okay. I've got me. I've got myself. I can support myself through this, and whatever that looks like for you. Um, I also created some ideas, some not necessarily phrases, but a kind of like a rough plan for when parents get angry. And I'll share this with you. Whenever I have parent teacher meetings, I not brace for the worst, but I have an idea of what to do when a parent shows up very angry, very frustrated, and they want to take it out on me. So my plan is to give the parent space to be a human, to give them that freedom, to give them that moment to express their emotions. Because then, once they have vented all of it out, I don't have to take it personally. I don't have to take it on as a task for me to solve. But when it is all out, I can then go into step two, which is work with the parent through this emotion. What I usually do is to kind of repeat some of the things that they say, but then more in a neutral way. I once had a very angry parent who just didn't like the way the company that I work for has changed the setup of the lessons. So we went from meeting the students twice a week face to face to now meeting the students once a week face to face and once a week online. And this parent was furious that the pay was the same, that the price of the course was the same, but that the students only saw a teacher face to face only once. And they were furious about it. So I repeated back to them that this must be a very frustrating time for them, how the company has changed the way they were conducting the lessons, and that they initially paid for something else than that what they are getting now. And this really helped them to kind of get the worst out of their emotions. And then step three is to have my own back. In this conversation, I did not take their anger towards me personally. I kept on repeating to myself that I was the person, I was the teacher that the students saw face to face only once a week, and that the anger of the parent was about the expectation that they were going to see a face to face teacher twice a week. I had my own back in the sense of I knew what I taught, I knew what I said, and I knew that I did the best that I could. Now, at the same time, that doesn't mean that everybody else has to be happy with it. I knew that if I had my back, I could accept their anger and I wouldn't take it home. I wouldn't stress about it afterwards. This conversation, by the way, lasted half an hour. It was two parents and they were furious. And because I was pretty calm and I didn't see it as a personal attack, I felt okay. I was like, this is a moment for the parent to vent, to have a face to face person who they can, be angry at. But it doesn't mean that I have to feel bad about it. It was not my decision how this company is conducting their lessons. I don't have to necessarily agree with why she was angry. I just know that I can be of service as a teacher by guiding them through this emotion and letting them have this moment of emotion. And as soon as I figured this out, I have never had any burnout anymore. I have had terrible management. I have had very difficult students, and I did not burn out. I have had the burnouts that I've had was with pretty decent management and the best students that I've ever taught. And yet I was about to burn out. So when we look at burnout, it is so important to remember that we are the ones in control of how we feel in any situation. We can control what we do with the stress and anxiety that comes up sometimes. And when we take space, when we take some time and a moment to actually process it, to sit with it, and then make a plan how to move forward from it, it just lessens its grip up to the point where you're so strong in this muscle. It's kind of like going to the gym, like the mental gym, where at some point, any challenge that comes up at work, you're shouldering it with a sense of onwards and forwards, with determination. And you can learn so much from this process. So I really hope you try this out. Please let me know in the comments below, and I will speak to you soon. Bye bye.